No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. I'm your host, Swamp Swimmer, and with me, as always, the Kobe to my Shaq, Vespacian.
Hey everybody, how you doing? That's a good one.
So the reason why I chose that one is I think a while back we talked about how I watch the American football, and we're looking at comparisons between, ninth age players in American football. It is currently the NBA playoffs, and I also enjoy watching the NBA. In fact, my team is the Denver Nuggets. I went to college in Denver. They're my team. They're in the playoffs. They're the number one seat in the West. I'm really excited about it. I just thought I'd share that with everyone. But the question is, A, Vespacian, do you enjoy watching NBA? And B, is since my understanding is basketball in general is more popular in Europe than American football, obviously, is there some overlap with ninth age players and watching the NBA? Is there somewhere we can find a common ground there? What do you think?
Good question. I do enjoy watching the NBA. I'm not a big regular season fan. Sort of like with baseball. I just think there's so many games. I think it's hard to get like really invested during the season for me. I can watch football. There's not as many games, but American football that is, but the NBA, I mean, it's like, there's like whatever it is, 80, 90 games per team. Like I just, before the postseason even starts, and then there's potentially 7 games per round of the playoffs. It's a lot. So what usually happens to me is I usually get interested sort of like, semifinals, quarterfinals, rounds of the playoffs in the NBA. That's historically what I've what I've found. And we're fortunate in the West, with the Lakers and the Warriors over the course of the last couple of decades to have had championship or championship contending teams. So I mean, definitely been enjoying those postseason games. So yeah,
Cool,
it's getting exciting this year.
Yeah, it is. It is. The Lakers and the Warriors are in this quarterfinal. They're playing each other, which is exciting. Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, the LeBron Warriors, rematch. I still fondly remember that. The comeback of the greatest comeback of all time, right? The LeBron leading the Cavs to topple the Warriors in Game 7. I watched that game on my honeymoon, so that was that was a great series. I'm hoping this is a good one too.
Amen to that. So anyone watching, if you like watching the NBA or the European League, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Maybe we could do some sort of, I don't know, combination of. I'm trying to think if where's the overlap. Like we were thinking about with American football, of like doing a weekly like mirror of football teams with ninth age games. I don't know. Is there somewhere there? Maybe not, but thought I'd check it out. But we are here to talk about your round 4 in the North American Masters 2023. You're sitting on 22 points, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah. Not a great start.
Not a good start, but then you get paired into Neil with his Dread Elves. And I think this is the first matchup where you can actually outshoot your opponent.
Yes, Neil does not have a lot of shooting, so that I do feel confident in. And yeah, I was pretty. Neil is a great player, and I was hoping to have a little bit of a different matchup in Game 4, and I got it. So looking forward to this one. It's also flags, so kind of an intriguing twist there. So yeah, I was looking forward to starting fresh on day 2.
Yep, exactly. Frontline clash, capture the flags. Let's get into it. If you're interested in Vespacian's list, please click the link right above my head. It'll take you to the round 1 video where we go over his list in a little more detail. But let's see what Neil has. Dread Elves, a master on witchcraft with a binding scroll and the scales, which I forgot. That's like the one where it bounces back attacks in combat or something like that.
No, this is a bound spell, but just off the top of my head, it's either wheel turns or spectral blades. I think it's bounced back and forth through the lab process, but it's a bound spell.
Okay. He's got the Dreadpinch General with Seal of the Republic, paired weapons, lacerating touch, and crystal ball. So pretty strong magic defense there. A BSB with double Aether Icon, Willow's Ward, Kraken's Hide, and a spear with Master of Slaughter. An Assassin, 32 Spears, Executioner's Icon, 11 Corsairs, 2x5 Riders, 2x10 Obsidian Guard, 12 Judicators, 2 Raptor Chariots, a Divine Altar Effigy of Dread, 2 Hunting Chariots, and a Mist Leviathan.
Yep.
So yeah, not a whole lot of shooting, but definitely MSU.
Yeah, this has been pretty typical of Neil's list. He's basically got like a gigantic spear star out of core and then a bunch of little units of varying types. He loves that Mist Leviathan, which is great against me. And then, witchcraft, obviously, lots of good anti-shooting mechanics in witchcraft, combined with some really strong anti-magic. So not an easy matchup, but certainly better than getting outshot by my opponent for sure.
Yeah, true. Let's look at your little pre-game notes here. You put this as a green, which I think is the right move. Yeah. In zoning with the Huntsman. Yeah. Tell me, go over what your pre-game thoughts are.
Yeah. So. Basically, I think mission is a big deal here, and flags generally is one that I think goes relatively well for me because he's got two 10-man res 3 5-up armor, scoring units that I can, work on, or maybe 3 even, that I can work on from range pretty handily. So I felt like the mission slightly advantaged me, and then, obviously getting first turn is a big deal. But my main focus was to try to work on the things that moved quickly, right? And make sure that I was smart about target prioritization on the scoring and didn't leave that up to chance, basically. Because if I can get 1 or 2 of those scoring units down from range, I think it makes it really hard for him.
Yeah, true. Let's jump into the first picture. This is deployment.
Yeah, so a role that I was happy to lose was the role for sides. So Neil picked sides, and I got to drop for first turn. Yeah. And you can see, try to take advantage of the fact that he had that house, disrupting his deployment on the right-hand side and basically dropped over there. Just complicates his advance, essentially. He can't really drop on the line and rush forward straight across from me. So that was my thinking there. And keep in mind, obviously I dropped for first, so he counter deployed me. And I think we tried to take advantage of that wall for some early, cover in the later turns. He really did try to keep my range out. In first turn, you can see how far away he is from me. Yeah. But again, that's the advantage of getting first turn. It gives me more time to work on him. And as I had mentioned, I put the Huntsman on the left-hand side. I really didn't want to have the risk of him frenzy baiting me, so I actually parked my Heath Hunters there in front of my Huntsman.
Oh, gotcha.
To prevent that. Because the thing I was worried, Neil's a great player. I was worried he'd Vanguard one of those Shadow Rider units up basically as frenzy bait, and with 2 Huntsman unit there, it's very possible that I could have failed one of those. So just didn't want to take any risks.
Yeah, true.
But I liked the positioning on the hill. to zone his advance, create complications for him, so that it wasn't just like a clean sweep forward for him. So that was the thought there. So you can see left to right, on my side, the huntsmen, hunters, huntsmen. I scouted my pathfinders there to get range on his advance. It looks like my blade dancers and the BSB there. Behind is one of the forest guard with paired weapons and the baby mage, the big archer unit with the Cosmo mage, and then to the right, the other two forest guard units. Basically, kind of trying to keep my scoring back in the corner in general. And then the avatar I had over on the right, I basically just had him over there because on the off chance that Neil, tried to push strong around the house, I just wanted that insurance policy there. So that was the thought process.
Yeah, and he's maneuverable enough that he can make it back to the center of the board pretty easily.
Right, exactly.
All right, and just briefly go over his deployment.
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I'm in the way. So basically, for some, you all may have noticed that I moved to a different AV setup. The camera was a little bit pixelated on the other platform, so I can't quite see everything here. Okay. There's some sort of weird, but anyways, it looks like he's got his chariots basically over on the left-hand side. He's got his big spear star with that kind of arch in the middle there. Yeah, and then he's got his 3 scoring units and his bunker behind that. And then he's also got the Miss Leviathan, which is that kind of big wolf-looking thing right there. Yeah, in the middle. And he's actually got that in a field. And then over on the right-hand side, he's got 1 chariot and one of his shadow riders, and there's his little assassin sitting on the roof of the house, keeping an eye on everybody.
Sitting on the house, waiting to strike. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next pick. This is bottom of 1.
Yeah, so you can see my movement here. Basically, a couple of things have he hasn't fully completed his movement, so you're seeing my movement and some of his moves. Mm-hmm. So you can see I basically adjust. I bring my blade dancers forward. I'm happy to have them threatening. I want to prevent like the Miss Leviathan from moving up unopposed. I bring my pathfinders up. Archers turn to shoot off that Shadow Rider unit that was in the lee of the house. I think giving me the ability to shoot that unit off early over on the other side.
Yeah,
it was over there. Giving me the ability to shoot that off early, I think, was a little bit of a mistake. And otherwise, I start bringing. Obviously, Neil didn't put a big, heavy presence over on the right, so I start bringing the Avatar over. What I was able to do, I think, with an Ice and Fire and maybe one of the Pathfinder units, is I was able to get that chariot that was behind the house as well. So pretty happy overall with the first turn damage. The one thing that I did, unfortunately, went poorly was you can see that he had 1 Shadow Rider unit or 1 Shadow Rider left to chaff up one of my Huntsman units. I think I put a pretty good amount of damage into that guy and just couldn't get the full unit off, which is a shame. As many people know, right? 1 is as good as 5, and in some cases better, right?
Yeah,
So that was a shame. So now you can start to see Neil moving forward, right? So you see him sweeping with the chariots over on my left, his right. Mm-hmm. He's going to start making some moves forward with his spears and then his Miss Leviathan. So I was feeling pretty good about how things had gone. I cleared up the right, which basically gave me a lot of room to move out to the right as he swung around and let my shooting do the work. So I was feeling pretty happy with where I was at here.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that really helps to clear out the complete right. Let's see here. Next photo. This is bottom of 2 move. So this is his bottom of 2 movement. This is not bottom of 2. No, it is. If you go back, there's been quite a lot of. So
let me give you a little bit of an idea of what happened here. So he brings his Miss Leviathan up, um, sort of right into the middle. Basically, he kind of brings him over the fence there.
Mm-hmm.
He pushes his spears way up, brings both of his raptor chariots up, and brings, I think he brings both of his little scoring units up to take the wall. He'd set them up so they could move 10 right up to onto the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens in my turn is I'm pretty sure I do fail the frenzy. This is another rerollable 9 frenzy check with a bloody huntsman. I do fail it, so I do have to take that Shadow Rider on the hill,
Okay.
with the left unit. What is hard to see in that last picture is with the right unit, he gave me a very easy charge to the Miss Leviathan, and so my thinking was he doesn't really have any great counters set up for me in the middle there. So I charge with my right hand huntsman unit, and Neil flees, and I think he needed it wasn't a ton, but it also wasn't short to jump his units defending the wall. I think he needed like a 7 or an 8, and he didn't jump him. He got like a 6, and so my huntsman caught him. So now if you fast forward, you can see my movements and kind of the result of that. So there are my huntsmen up in the middle there, right? And so I get the Miss Leviathan off early. Honestly, that was huge, right? So him not making that flee roll. That being said, I think he could have had that model a little further back and basically made it an auto flee for him. So, a mix of his kind of early aggression with it not paying off and getting punished for it, essentially.
Yeah.
And then on the left, and I was a little bit confused. I think he liked the hill, basically, but he put his spears and 2 of his chariots into that huntsman unit on the hill, knowing they can't flee, right? So, and I think he actually wasn't happy that this happened, but he actually made it with all 3. And I think some of them were a little bit long, so maybe he was just kind of hedging his bets, but he made it with all 3 with some big rolls, and they all went in. And he liked being on that hill, but my thought process was, I'm pretty far away from that hill, actually, right? So I can easily get out of the range. Also, because they all made it in, that was helpful for me because now they're all stacked up. So it's hard for him to turn and make threats towards my lines, right? So although losing the huntsman, was a bit of a tragedy, I'm not too bent out of shape because it takes a lot of his hitting power away from my lines to a certain degree, whereas they could have been way up in the middle, right? So pretty happy with that.
He decided not to take the counter charge with his 2 small units into your huntsman here in the center.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 reasons there. So I did make a mistake, and this is, boys and girls, this is a classic example of you move a model and then you think of something else and you shuffle it around a little bit and you forget about the things that you initially moved it for.
Yeah, we've all been there.
And I'm talking like by a millimeter, I left a charge with that Obsidian Guard unit that you see has now pivoted away from the wall, right? I left a charge of that unit into my avatar. It wasn't an easy one. I think it was like a 9, so not super close. But he could have made that charge and popped the assassin into the avatar, which is, to use a technical term, a bummer. That would have been tough. That being said, I have Entangling Vines. That is not, I don't think the assassin kills the avatar and then he pastes him in return, obviously, with the stomps and things like that.
Yeah.
But there was a squeaky moment where I was like, there was no need to take that risk. I got lucky in that he failed it. And that was fortunate for me. And having the assassin out actually advantages me now, right? Because otherwise I would be waiting for it to show up, right?
Oh, so he had to choose to reveal the assassin in that small core unit, that small whatever it is, Obsidian
Guard unit, and then
do the charge.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So a mistake that I didn't get punished for, and actually ended up being a positive for me, right? Because now that assassin's out, and I can do something about it, right?
Yep.
So I think he didn't go after my huntsman in the middle there because they strike simultaneously to judges, even if the judges charge.
Yeah.
Because their agility 6. So I think his thinking was he probably could have taken that unit off, but he would have depleted himself and left that scoring unit out in the middle of the field, with no defense, right? So I think his thinking was he's got some shooting, so he's gonna, I think, take him off with his auxiliaries or the crossbows, whatever that core unit is that can shoot, that is light troops, corsairs.
Oh yeah, the corsairs.
Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure that's what he does. So if we move on to the next one,
this is top of 3.
Yeah. So here you can see he deletes my both huntsmen, right? So they're all gone now. Yeah. Because I mentioned that kind of traffic jam he created for himself, so he had to overrun with one of the chariots. It has no arc, right, on anything now. And he then reformed with the other 2 units. The spearmen are now facing towards my line, but again, they're way far away. You can see with the stick, I was able to literally get completely out of his range with every unit, right? So pretty happy with that. Avatar moves out of the arc of the Obsidian Guard, and one of my big ticket activities this turn is to shoot the absolute snot out of that unit and kill it and the assassin in one go.
Yeah.
So that's the big deal there. So I turn, almost everything I think is planning to shoot at that unit essentially. And so but looking at the state of play, pretty happy with where things are. I've got I think pretty good handle on the objective, because he's got essentially no threat on my scoring, and I've got 2 of his units in pretty rough shape. He's kept his other Obsidian Guard unit in the back in the water, you can see there.
Yeah.
And he's got this is turn 3, no viable charges, right? So that means that we're looking at turn 4 earliest to him getting into my lines, right? So feeling pretty comfortable at this point. So
yeah.
So I think this
is bottom of 3.
Yeah.
So with shooting, you do delete that Obsidian Guard unit with the assassin in it.
I do. Yeah.
Nice.
So wipe that unit out.
That's nice.
Huge deal. Yeah, huge deal. I think it does take a lot of juice to do that. So you can see, I have not been able to work on the spear block. I've not been able to work on the chariots on the left. So now I need to do some work over there, right? So but at the same time, I'd like to get that judge's unit in the next to the avatar up there, because that's another scoring unit. And basically, what I'm doing here is he's marched up his spears, and I've done the math and I've been thinking about it, and basically the blade dancers are actually a pretty good counter to that spear unit now that the assassin's gone, right? They strike Simo if the spear unit charges. I did take Truth of Time, so I have the option to buff them, which is, I think, actually this turn I do that. And so I set it up so that he's got too long of charges with my, on the rest of my units, or maybe he's just failed to charge here or something like that. And I've got the blade dancers basically, in a good place to counter. So yeah, that's where we're at here. And what I need to really do is finish off that chariot that's threatening me in the bottom left, finish off the judges, and then I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I still have my chaff. You can see the Heath Hunters there.
Yeah, right here.
And my scoring unit's pretty safe. So I've also set myself up so that I can flee with the archers. That's what it is. The archers have a have a good flee path to flee away from either the chariot or the spears if they charge, which would then leave the blade dancers the opportunity that they need. So, yeah, that's where we're at.
Interesting. Oh yeah, and you're sitting behind a forest too, so if he can't go into your blade dancers, because then he's not going to be steadfast. You're probably going to outwound him, and you might break him.
Yeah, that was my thinking. So yeah.
Ooh, smart. You're a smart player. This is a big jump. Let's jump back, but the next image is the end of the game.
Yeah. Okay. So Neil is a very solid player and always comes up with some kind of tricky maneuvers. So he did something here that I totally did not expect. He jumps his, I guess it's his BSB and his prince out of the spears. And essentially what he's trying to do is use them to start attacking and working into my scoring units in the back. So I do believe he does charge with that chariot into my archers. I do flee, so I hop over into the back. And then he pops those 2 units out, and he's basically trying to create weird, bad decisions for me. Right now, on the flip side, I've got an absolute megaton of shooting, and they're just res 3 elves, right? So my thinking is that's a pretty high risk, high reward move. But if you think about it, he's already down, he's essentially lost the objective, right? So unless he can get some lucky breaks, this is going to be a big loss to him. So he takes this high risk, high reward move. I think at this point we can jump ahead and start seeing what happens as a result.
Ooh, goodness.
Yeah. So
first off, you take off that second obsidian guard.
I get the judges.
Yeah.
I get the judges. I get the other chariot that was threatening me and charge the archers and bounce them into the back. Right. Yeah. I haven't at this point managed to address that raptor chariot down there, but I did manage to get the spears.
Yeah, they're over there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that the blade dancers with Truth of Time go in and just like vaporize that unit and chase them down, which was pretty cool. I strike first. It's like 2s and 3s with no buff, re-rolling 1s in the forest. It's pretty, with like 30 attacks. It's pretty nasty. And without the characters in there, they don't have a lot of reliable damage output back. I'm distracting. It's a pretty lopsided engagement there. So so I managed to get rid of them. You can see I did have to, with a lot of creative movement and fleas and everything like that. I get backed into the corner with his characters, but ultimately his characters either get shot off or killed by combat res or something like that. Ooh. And it was a bit of a close run thing. I think there was one character, I'm forgetting the details here, but there was one character, I think the BSB, that actually managed to get in, and I did have to take a couple while the spears were fighting the blade dancers. My BSB was away, and I did have a couple 8 or 9 non-rerollable break checks against his BSB that could have gotten pretty dicey. You can see both my mages are back there, so he could have picked up a bucket of points. I think he still would not have had a shot at the objective, but he could have picked up easy a few hundred to 1,000 points if some rolls had broken his way there, but they didn't ultimately. So I got both of those characters and the spears, and now we're kind of in cleanup mode. This you can see here. He's essentially jumps his Wizard Master back into the Obsidian Guard. Mm-hmm. He goes for some kind of shooting opportunity. I think I had one of my mages out of a unit, and he tried to go after him with the handbow, the Corsairs unit. But it didn't pay off, or I was still on 1 wound or something like that. And ultimately, I think this might be the last picture, because ultimately I get basically everything except for that Obsidian Guard unit, 1 or 2 of the chariots, basically, and the Wizard Master. So Wizard Master, decent amount of points left there, but and he managed to get both my Huntsman units, trying to think. Both of my huntsman units, maybe one of my scoring units ended up going down or had to flee off the table.
Yeah, looks like
or maybe one of my Pathfinder units.
One's off the table that one of your scoring units.
Yeah, one's off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got one of my scoring units, both my huntsman units, and I can't quite remember if there was anything else. Maybe you got my small mage or something. But at the end of the day, it was enough from a points perspective to hold on to a point. So it was a big win, 19-1 to me.
19-1. It's that's a solid win. I think looking back at the game, you played it just right. You just overwhelmed them with shooting, and your dice showed up. Like you didn't spike your dice, but like you didn't roll poorly. You had a couple shooting phases in previous games that didn't go your way, and I think this was a list advantage over Neil. I think you're both great players, but you definitely had a list advantage. Do you think he should have gone about it differently? Maybe castled?
I think, Castle maybe wouldn't have been terrible, but I think he still loses objective and then and then probably small on points. So he's probably if he does that, I think he's got an upside of 6-ish, maybe 5 points. And that's, whereas if he goes full aggro, he opens up a lot of opportunities for me, but I could go down big, for example, if he'd made it into that avatar, or, if that character ploy had worked out and he'd managed to windmill through my mages or something like that, for example, he could have fought higher ceiling, lower floor with the aggro approach, right? So
yeah,
I think he figured might as well. We weren't, maybe if we'd been higher up and a smaller loss would have kept him in contention, maybe he would have played that way. But we're sitting well below the 50% mark. A big win's the only thing that's going to move the needle, right? So I think he went for that.
Yeah, makes sense. So that takes you up to what, 41 after 4 games?
Yeah.
Hey, that takes you over 50%, which is always a win.
Yeah. yeah, absolutely. So I was happy to kind of turn things around a little bit, and then looking forward to game 5.
Yep. So next game will be your game 5, and hey, thanks for watching. These are really intense and really interesting games, so I'm glad we're going over all of them. We'll see. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you guys in the next game.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.